What has the EU ever done for women? Well, quite a lot, according to its fans who say that a British exit from the EU would be a setback for women's rights. Paola Buonadonna is from the British Influence, a pro-EU pressure group, and UKIP's Suzanne Evans is still here. Paola, welcome to the programme. Has the EU really been that good for women? I mean, are there concrete examples of where we would be in a worse off position without the EU?
Absolutely, but first of all, the EU is not an abstract concept here in this debate. I would argue that Britain, working with its other partners in the EU, has for the past 40 years contributed to bring forward measures that have made the lives of women much better, starting off in '75 with the equal pay legislation and progressing on with maternity leave, parental leave, measures fighting discrimination against women in the workplace, but also in access to services, really concrete measures without whom the lives of women would be much worse. And also we, with the other partners, UK and the rest of them, are exerting a lot more pressure on third countries to make sure that gender rights are taken seriously and improved through treaties, through aid, and so on and so forth.
Has that made much difference, though, here in the UK? Are those sorts of achievements that you've talked about, equal pay, which many women will say still isn't a reality, but many of those arguments and policies would be in place here anyway, whether or not EU legislation had actually done?
Right. Now, this is interesting because if I understand it correctly, Suzanne, if your party triumphed not just in the European election in a month's time, but say in an alternative scenario in the general election next year, it would be actually your priority to take Britain out of the EU in order to create a huge bonfire of these legislation, measures, protections. That's what you want. That's what your party wants. That's the end. That's a logical end of what you've been preaching on Europe,
isn't it? Is that true, Suzanne Evans? You'd be rolling back rights for employees. That would affect women. Of course, we heard Nigel Farage say women with children are worth less to employers. Is that the sort of rhetoric that would then come forward?
That's not what Nigel said, and no, absolutely not. Yes, it is absolutely true that we would want a bonfire of a huge number of EU regulations. We've had over 4,000 new ones since 2010 alone.
Which ones?
But do we want to take away women's rights? Absolutely not. Well, it's very interesting that Paolo mentioned the 1975 EU initiative on equal pay. We'd already had the Equal Pay Act in Britain since 1970. There was absolutely no need for it here in Britain. And this is what UKIP consistently campaigns against, the fact that the EU very often tries to take over existing British laws and even water them down and make things worse for women. And can I give you three examples of just three examples, I could give you a long list, of how the EU's actually made things worse for women. Let's take people trafficking, the majority of whom are women sold into sex slavery. With the open door border policy, it's much easier now for a woman in, say, the Czech Republic or Bulgaria to be told she's getting a lovely job in Britain, Germany, France, or more usually the Netherlands, and find herself a sex slave in a brothel. Driving, car insurance premiums have gone up purely because of EU regulation. Now, we all know that women are the best and the safest and the most capable drivers. That's why we used to have cheaper car insurance. We no longer do. And finally, 0 hours contracts has been in the news all week. We can absolutely chart the rise of 0 hours contracts, which are particularly affecting women, since the EU Agency Workers Directive, which, and work 0 hours contract is big businesses' way of getting around that particular EU directive. It's affected women badly.
They're very interesting points you raise. So anti-trafficking measures, it is impossible for a single country to uphold significant anti-trafficking measures because, of course, people are trafficked because they're trafficked from outside. And in fact, this government, who had an opt-out on EU-wide anti-trafficking measures, decided to actually opt back in because Britain would have been a magnet for human traffickers if Britain had been the only country not to strengthen its controls and its measures on that. The car insurance thing, that is absolutely the flip side of something else. That is a flip side of not treating women pensioners worse than male pensioners. If you want women to be equal, then you've got to treat them equally with men. And for everything that you might think we have lost, we've actually gained something more substantial.
All right, and let me just ask, Suzanne Evans, in terms of the policies and bureaucracy that you would like to get rid of, it is true that your party advocates scrapping a raft of employment rights for small businesses, doesn't it?
It's true that our party
parental leave.
Would want to certainly look at these, not scrapped parental leave. No, that's a complete myth.
Right.
It's interesting
so
that I
you
know
wouldn't
that
scrap parental leave, then you wouldn't want to see that being taken out in terms of employee rights?
No, we wouldn't. And it's quite interesting because I know Paolo's written a lot on this. And when I look at the sources that she puts forward for all these concerns that she says, these policies that she says UKIP has, like scrapping maternity rights, like abolishing equal pay.
Your manifesto from
No, you weren't. No, you're not.
Yes,
because I'm sorry, with respect,
yes.
I checked your website out, your blog post out.
Was it not in your manifesto in 2010?
Well, the 2010 manifesto has been ripped up.
Well,
and
except we
chopped
have
away,
Nigel
and I don't
Farage on the
think it
programme
was
who still
anyway.
says we haven't got the 2015 manifesto, so that's the last.
So which manifesto are we
Any
working on
other
at the moment?
political
Can you
party.
enlighten us? The 2010 manifesto has been scrapped, and Nigel says he hasn't even read it. Okay, there's no manifesto in 2014 because it's a page, it's one sheet.
Yes, we released our manifesto last week.
What's on it?
Well, what's on it is getting out of the EU.
Right.
It's about taking control of our borders
But
again.
you have no vision beyond that,
Yes,
do you?
we have huge visions beyond that. It's about green taxes. You know, there's another way in which the EU's not supported women. 20% of our fuel bills are caused by the green taxes that have been imposed by the EU.
All right,
and
so
who's affected worse by those? Very often British female pensioners living alone who are in desperate fuel poverty.
Did you regret then Nigel Farage's comments? You say he didn't say it, but he did say that women who leave to have children are worth far less in a client sense to employers, and that young able women who are prepared to sacrifice a family life and stick with their careers do as well, if not better, than men if they sacrifice a family life.
Look, he was talking about brokerage, and he made it clear in a subsequent interview on this programme that he was with you, I think, Joe, that he was talking specifically about that particular incident at a particular time when he was working. Nobody believes that. I certainly do. Do you honestly think, as an intelligent woman, I would be in a party like UKIP if I thought it was even remotely sexist?
Right.
I hope not.
Well, to you, Paolo, you've written that the rise of UKIP is seeing the Berlusconification of British media and politics. What do you mean by that?
I think that the rise of UKIP has meant that. I want to clarify this. UKIP has come about and is enjoying a measure of success for a number of reasons, and there are also good reasons why people feel annoyed about the way that the debate has been conducted, about the fact that the Westminster elites are responding to their needs or to their worries. I don't want to disqualify or lessen the concerns of people who might be inclined to vote for UKIP. The Berlusconification, a terrible
I could barely
word,
say it, yes.
which I have to TM it, I've invented it, it's mine, of British public life and media, is this. When Berlusconi came to power, when Berlusconi recreated himself as a politician in Italy, he was given a 20-year pass from having to explain himself, from having to answer supplementary questions in interviews, from having to actually be coherent and or be ashamed of the kind of things that would have led somebody else to resign.
Is Nigel Farage really like Silvio Berlusconi?
He's not like Silvio Berlusconi in any other respect,
right.
But he is in this respect. He's treated as a phenomenon.
I think women generally are more disengaged with politics, and I think it's just partly the nature of things. Women have a lot more pressing issues to concern about than politics. That's right. You know, I really struggle
to their everyday pressing issues. I think that's the
I struggle
issue.
running my own business. I'm a mother. You know, politics takes a huge amount of time and energy, and I just sometimes think it's not quite so easy for women to get involved, which is a great shame.
Thank you both very much.
Thank you.